What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Renewable Energy Smart Pod. I'm your host, Sean McMahon, and today we're going to be talking to Horace Luke, the founder and CEO of Gogoro. Gogoro's battery swapping technology aims to help electrify the transportation sector. And if you're listening to this podcast, you might already know that transportation is one of the sectors that produces the most greenhouse gas emissions, and efforts are already underway to tackle the problem. Airlines are working on sustainable fuels. Long-haul trucking is being electrified. Even the shipping industry has gotten into the act and started to pivot to greener fuels. And just in case you've been living under a rock for the last decade or so, consumer automobiles are also going electric with the help from some guy named Elon. Perhaps you've heard of him? So where does Gogoro fit into this electrification puzzle? If you'll pardon the pun, what is this battery swapping company's lane? The answer is two-wheel vehicles. No, I'm not talking about electric bikes like the ones you see kids zooming around everywhere these days. I mean, seriously, do any kids actually pedal bikes anymore? Gogoro's network of batteries is powering the scooters that are massively popular in urban areas across Asia. This is a huge challenge, especially when you consider the billions of miles commuters on two-wheelers travel each year. Yep, billions. Electrifying those miles would be a very big deal. And it's okay if you're wondering right about now what battery swapping technology even is. Horace is going to share more about the technology Gogoro deploys and the vision the company, which was recently listed on the NASDAQ, has for the future of swappable batteries. Here's a hint. It's a future that extends far beyond transportation. Looking ahead, pretty soon I'll be talking to John Belizaire, the founder and CEO of Soluna Computing. John is going to join the show to talk about how sustainable computing can play a crucial role in making renewable energy projects more profitable and maybe, just maybe, clean up the image of cryptocurrency mining. Crypto mining has taken a bit of a beating recently, but John has a different perspective. It's one he recently shared on Capitol Hill when he testified before Congress, and one that might make you see crypto mining as something that will help, rather than hurt, grid resiliency and the growth of renewables. That episode's coming up soon, but for now, let's get today's conversation rolling. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this episode of the Renewable Energy Smart Pod. I'm very excited to have our guest joining us today from Taiwan. Horace Luke is the founder and CEO of Gogoro. Horace, how are you doing today?
Hey, Sean, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
There's a lot of exciting things going on in your world these days. The company, just was listed on the NASDAQ. You're one of the leading companies around the world in battery swapping technology. And so I want to kind of have you come on and talk to our listeners a little bit about that. So let's start from the very beginning. What are the basics here? What is battery swapping?
People in the West most often don't realize is how much the people in the East depends on two-wheelers in order to go about their everyday life, right? Over 50% of all urban commute miles done daily around the world is done on two-wheelers. In just China, India, and Taiwan alone, we're talking about 500 million two-wheelers rolling around, taking people to work, picking kids up from school, going to the supermarket, et cetera, et cetera. But yet the urban environment that these vehicles are in, it's impossible for them to be electrified. I mean, we now hear about electric vehicle. I mean, on four-wheel space, you got the Tesla, you got Lucid, you got everybody from four-wheelers to semi-trucks, electrifying. But two-wheeler, if you look at cities across the East, it's really difficult for these two-wheelers to be electrified because it's just impossible to find places to park. Therefore, it's impossible to find places to recharge your vehicle. So that's kind of where the aha moment came in for Gogoro, was really about, battery are not included. Instead of owning your battery, instead of having to wait to charge it, out in the open, you're swapping in seconds. So, you buy a vehicle, it doesn't come with a battery, you subscribe to the battery, just like you buy an iPhone or Android phone in the US, it does not come with a mobile plan, right? You got your device and then you sign up for a mobile plan. Same thing with us. We're now working with a number of vehicle makers. We work on top of our own brand. We're working with Yamaha. We're working with Suzuki Taiwan. We're working with A Motor and Aeon. We're working with PGO, a number of other vehicle makers to build vehicles that are compatible with our swapping network. So instead of charging the battery, you simply buy the vehicle, and then you subscribe to the network through a number of variety of plans that we got, starting from like, let's say $10, a month for about 60 miles. And then anything over 60 miles, you pay incrementally on top of, all the way to, there are a couple plans in between, all the way to all you can ride. And the ability for you to pay like 40, $50, and you can ride as much as you ever want, on a two-wheeler per month. And throughout the city, you would simply, when the battery goes low, you stop by one of our stations, and then you swap it out in seconds. So going from zero fuel to 100% fuel in just seconds.
Yeah, I want to talk about those charging stations for a bit. They're called Go stations. Is that right?
Yeah, they're called Go stations. Think of them as really like Coca-Cola vending machine size. Okay, they're a little bit bigger than that, but they're placed in places like convenience store, supermarket, universities, underneath apartment buildings, in kind of apartment complexes, at gas stations, at bus stops and train stops, and very conveniently placed. And in Taiwan, we've been doing this since 2015. Today, we have more location than gas station in urban centers in the cities. By the end of this year, across the entire island of Taiwan, we'll have more swapping location than we do with gas stations. We just shipped our 1 millionth battery, and we have almost about 500,000 riders on the network swapping batteries literally several times a second. Our network is fully autonomous. People go and just swap batteries on their own. It just refueling in seconds.
And so how many batteries are at each charging station? I mean, I'm sure they vary by size, but give me the range.
Yeah, they vary by size. They vary from like 30 batteries all the way up to, a little more than 100. A small scale station services, several hundred customers. And then you got, the large scale stations, that what we call super go stations. They service, well over 1,000 customers. People come in every, several days, every 3 days or so. They come in and swap a battery. The best way to think about it for Americans is Blue Rhino, the propane gas tank, for barbecues.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. Like that.
But the batteries are much smaller. I've got to make it clear the batteries are much smaller than a big old heavy propane tank. They're kind of they look to me like kind of like one of those portable speakers, like a JBL or a Bose speaker that you can kind of carry around. Like how much do these things weigh? Like
I've been living in Taiwan for so long. I go by kilograms. They weigh 10 kilograms. So kind of like a jug of milk, about a jug of milk.
You just kind of lift up the seat, plug it in, and rock and roll and get going, huh?
Exactly, right. And it's high power terminals are physical. The communication terminals are through through NFC, through wireless. And so it's environmental proof, is completely waterproof. Rainy day, you plug it, take it out of the vehicles, plug in our station. Our station do the analytics. Did you pay your bill? What's your profile? How much have you written? Get all that data out, transfer that data into the new set of batteries, and then eject 2 batteries so we can put it in your trunk. We can do it in about several seconds, and it's a great user experience for the consumer. And before we started in Taiwan, there was really less than 1% of two-wheelers that were sold that was electric. Last year, we ended the year with in Taipei, about 26% market share. So 1 out of 4 vehicles sold is actually a Gogoro and Gogoro partner vehicle. And then what's perhaps most important is that represented 95% of all electric vehicles sold, our battery swapping. So we're not only a game changer in this equation, but also definitely the de facto standard as we host. I think in Taiwan now we have 43 or 45 different vehicle models. So you want ones that are high performance, we got it. You want ones that are 3-wheelers, we got it. We got ones that are like super low performance and super easy to ride, we got that too. We got tall ones for big families, so that you can actually grab a whole family and put it on it. Or you got a single rider one. Just a variety of vehicles using the identical same swapping network. So think of us as really a technology platform guy. I always say we're the Android of EV or the Windows Intel of computing. We create technology that enable other people to build great vehicles in addition to our vehicles that we build.
Yeah, that's funny you said Android because that's what I was thinking too. I was like, they're building kind of the platform that everyone can use to power their vehicles. What kind of energy sources do you use to power the network of charging stations? This is a renewable podcast. Are you guys using renewable energy for that?
Yeah, Taiwan, the renewable energy is starting to come up. It's predominantly not renewable today, but it's making it there. We will prioritize that as it's available. What's interesting is that it's just not just the renewable energy that's important, but also when you take energy and also how you're being part of the grid. So a good example of how we do things is all our stations are connected to our central nervous system, so to speak, our central server. So most recently, we announced a partnership with NLX, the world's largest VPP or virtual power plant provider, to basically do demand response. So if the grid needs to balance at about 65 hertz, right? And in the next 10 minutes, if they see a surge coming, they ask everybody around town to basically contribute by slowing down or stopping their energy use. Well, we actually have a smart system in the background that actually allows us to do that. We not only look at the way that you ride and how you use energy, but also because of that, we can predict when it is that we need to actually charge these batteries just in time to get ready for the consumer to pick up. In between then, we can actually be a good grid participant by either participating in demand response by slowing down our charge, and of course with that comes some revenue stream that comes inbound because of demand response participation. But also on top of that, our stations are bidirectionally ready. So we're also working with Taipower, the single energy provider in Taiwan, to actually push the energy back into the grid. Today we have close to about 200 megawatt hour of battery on the side of the road at any given time. And that is a great opportunity for us to participate in distributed storage all throughout the city. So that's something that we're absolutely working on. And then on top of that, most recently we announced several other use of our battery outside of mobility. We're using our portable battery to power things like smart parking meter pole. So you're from Portland, so there are parking meters that actually uses solar to power itself. But unfortunately, in a city like Taipei, or in a lot of emerging countries that I'm going into, the ability to see sun is actually next to none. Not only a building is tall, but also at the same time, the sky is gray, right? The sky is extremely polluted. So instead of using solar, we're using our portable battery to power these smart parking pole for 27 days. So every 27 days, somebody goes out and swap a battery, and that extends the life use of these batteries beyond mobility. And for most of the listeners, they know that electric vehicle with batteries get to close to retirement at 80% of SOC, right, of available energy. Well, instead of recycling, we really ourselves and inside our company really believe in sustainability and reusability. We just announced several weeks ago our partnership with the city to back up stoplights. The Taiwan government is really looking to improve safety when it comes to rolling brownouts. In cities that I'm going into, in Jakarta, in Ho Chi Minh City, in cities across India, it's a big headache. Power goes out and then stoplight goes out. Nobody, traffic jam and accidents happen. We can actually put batteries there at every one of the stoplights to power it for 3 hours. So while the power dips out, we are keeping traffic going in a very safe and predictable way. So it's not just about mobility; it's about smart portable power that can be powering cities for the future.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about kind of being able to push the power back from the charging stations to the grid, because that's obviously a really hot topic here in the U.S. right now. Even the vehicle to home power. I'm one of those people who's on the waiting list for a Ford F-150 Lightning, and they one of the selling points there is it can power your home for a couple of days, and when we have these blackouts and power outages, so that's fascinating. So, and you said earlier, kind of right now you're obviously huge in the 2-wheel space. You got models that you offer that are 3 wheels. Any thoughts on going to 4-wheel and kind of challenging some of the big companies you mentioned, the Teslas, the Rivian, things like that? Or are you going to kind of stay 2 and 3-wheel?
Yeah, I think 4 wheels is a great market, but it's too. I moved to the East because I really wanted to solve the problem with the East, and in the East, a good example of usage of 2 wheels in India, 80% of all commute miles done every day is done on 2 wheelers. 60% of all gasoline spent every year is spent on two-wheelers. It's a gigantic problem to solve. We want to focus on two wheels and three-wheelers, solve that so that we have a better future for our future generation. In a four-wheeler, you got sofas, you got stereo system, you got windshields, you got air conditioner, you got a lot of things you need to move around. The energy efficiency of a four-wheeler is really a fraction of what it is on a two-wheeler. I'm able to go 100 kilometers, 60 miles, with just 3.4 kilowatt hour of energy. You can't do that in a four-wheeler. You need easily 5 times more than that energy in order to actually go the same distance. So in order to go four-wheelers, we need to actually get the energy density up so that we can get the usability easier to swap out those batteries. But in the meantime, a huge market, right? 500 million two-wheelers moving around in Asia alone that requires us, people like us to really pay some attention to.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. It sounds like you're staying where the batteries are most efficient right now. So, and you mentioned some of the markets you're in, Taiwan, India. Tell my listeners a little bit about what does your footprint look like right now, and what's the plan going forward the next couple of years?
We have over the last several years proved out our model in Taiwan. We started the company back in 2011. Spent about 4 or 5 years developing the first wave of technology. And then it's kind of like with the network, it's kind of like it's like SimCity. You have to have live network in order to develop the tools and systems and the algorithm to actually run it. Everything that you simulate might not be the same as how people use it. And so over the last couple of years, we've actually developed a lot of tools and systems to get ready for expansion. Today, we are in all of Taiwan. We have about 500,000 riders in Taiwan, using about 11,000 cabinets, the swap stick cabinets in 2,200 locations. So the model is kind of proven. We got our system ready. We've expanded into Korea with food delivery to power basically last mile to be clean. No vibration, no heat, no smelly for your food, which is good. We are also enabling a partner called Tier in Germany to do ride sharing, as well as we created ride sharing in that's called GoShare. That is 100% owned by us in Taiwan also as well. We started a pilot in Jakarta with GoTo and Gojek. If you don't know, that's the largest technology company in Indonesia that also just went public. Has 2 million riders on that network. We're getting ready to go fully electric. In Japan, we do holiday rental and try to get tourism to be clean. So we kind of dabbled in a lot of different things at the moment. On April the 5th, we went public on the NASDAQ, getting ready for the moment to expand and getting the needed resources and the partnership that it takes to go into places like India, China, Indonesia, and many other emerging markets. And that's kind of our big next step for us. To really, we secured a really good amount of resources for ourselves to be able to go expand, and that's a huge step for us. China, we start deploying in Hangzhou, in Wuxi, and Kunming. A couple more cities to come in the later part of the year as our vehicle makers get ready to commercialize. In Jakarta, we're working on expanding our pilot to a couple thousand vehicles. It's really market will take time to develop. And we're just at that cusp of that moment where we're going to take advantage of this kind of trend toward electric to commercialize.
Any plans to push into the United States?
I have lots of friends. You can tell from my accent, I grew up on the West Coast. I grew up in Seattle, and I spent some time in Portland. Lots of friends going, hey, man, what about my backyard? To be very honest with you, we are looking at places in the United States, but they're not of the priority at the moment for us. The world has a big problem with pollution in places like Ho Chi Minh City, places like Jakarta, places like Taipei here, places like many cities across China and India. We're just so focused with the limited resources we have to do a great job getting into those markets today.
Yeah, that makes sense. And plus, I mean, the two-wheeler adoption, like you mentioned, there's so many more trips taking place, in Asia than there is here in the U.S. Obviously, you're now public on the NASDAQ, and I was digging into some of your early backers. You have quite an impressive list. Kind of talk to me about how that process went, in the build-up to being listed.
Well, we've been very fortunate, to be very honest with you. We started with a simple thesis, right? So, computing has done great, right? The fact that you and I are talking on podcasts has to do with our computers, has to do with, I started my career, at Nike, and then eventually a friend of mine said, "Hey, the internet is going to change everything. You got to go check it out." So I drove, packed my stuff in Portland, drove up to Seattle, joined Microsoft, eventually became the creative director of Xbox, one of the early founders.
How'd that work out? Did Xbox ever become a popular device?
It was a great way for us to engage with what was called the future generation at the time, right? People like you and me. I eventually became, the creative director of Windows XP, kind of helping it become more consumer centric, kind of rebranding Windows, redoing the user interface of Windows with a big team. I believed in computing so much that it needed to fit in your pocket that I went and joined a little company at the time called High Tech Computer, and eventually became HTC. It's perhaps most famous for building the world's first half a dozen Android phones. I helped it build, for our friends in the US, T-Mobile MyTouch, for generations of MyTouch phones, for Android, for the Droid, for Verizon, for a number of different Android phones across the world. I helped the company build it from a white label company to the world's number one smartphone builder in 2010, 2011. And as I looked around, I said, is that going to be the most important thing? I just turned 40, and I was looking around and going, okay, is that what I'm going to spend the most of my life doing? Or is something else more important? And just as, technology has kind of improved human productivity and efficiency, I really believe we're entering into the decade of electrification and sustainability. How can you take energy and make it better and make it more sustainable so that we can all, I mean, you can't stop people from moving into the cities. That is going to happen over the next decade or 2 decades. But how do you
I
make
remember
cities?
everyone thought that the pandemic was going to change that, and it was like,
Yeah,
no, people will end
yeah,
up coming back. Don't worry.
because modern living is too good, right? Modern lifestyle is too good, right? It's too convenient, right? It's too attractive. And especially in big cities across Asia, there's 20, some people call 26, 27 mega cities around the world today. It's going to go by 2030, probably about somewhere in the 40s, right? According to the UN. There's a lot of cities they're going to get massively overpopulated. You can't stop that from happening. But how can you actually use technology to make those cities more sustainable? Sustainability is not about not taking minerals from the ground, not using resources. But how do you maximize the use of resources so you can actually extend the life as long as possible? Right? And that's what sustainability is. And as we enter into this decade of sustainability, several of us looked around the table and said, are we going to dedicate the rest of our career to do, quite honestly, smartphones and electronic devices? Or are we going to go apply our innovation and engineering effort toward making life better? And that thesis has attracted, it literally took me 20 minutes in talking to a billionaire in Taiwan. His name is Dr. Samuel Yin. He's perhaps most famous for innovation in construction, as well as starting the first hypermarket in China, beating out Walmart in China. It took me literally 20 minutes to talk to him and share with him my vision. And he said, do it. Let's do it. He's been my angel founder and supporter all along the way. And then we along the way, we also attracted, great individuals like former Vice President Al Gore through his investment fund called Generation that is based out of San Francisco and also in London, that has joined up for years now, supporting us and really believing in us. We got Temasek, one of the largest investment house in Asia, out of Singapore, and Engine Number One. The guys that put three independent board members into ExxonMobil, right? And the guys behind GM's, and championing GM's electrification, they also joined up in this effort. As well as the list goes on and on and on, as well as the world's, the iPhone maker Foxconn. Through our strategic partnership, they decide to also invest in us as we go public. So the roster has been a bunch of people that really has a long-term view on sustainability. It's been flattering to work with, the who's who of the investment community.
Yeah, it definitely is a roster of some big names there. So you mentioned a little bit about sustainability and raw materials, and that kind of segues to my next question. Like, what kind of headwinds are you concerned about? Because obviously, right now, a lot of news about access to raw materials and minerals and supply chain and things like that. So what kind of questions are you getting on that front? Because it seems like there's a lot of uncertainty out there right now. I mean, around the globe, not just with your company, but with almost every company.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of, what's amazing is that we took a topic of less is more. If you have not kind of figured it out by now, that we pick two-wheelers because it takes less resources to become sustainable. It takes less resources for it to, So for example, there is about 9,000 battery cells inside a Tesla today. We have less than 200 to power a vehicle that does its job within the city, right? About 125 cc to 150 cc performance. So the amount of electronics and resources it takes is very, very small. That's number one. We do a lot more with less. Number two thing is we're actually being looked at as a game changer in this industry. So we get great support from people like LG, from Samsung, SDI, from component makers to chip makers to manufacturing our system. Everybody's been there to help us because they see us as the guys that just got started and can take off. And we are today, if you think about swappable battery on lithium ion, we are perhaps the world's number one purchaser on battery cell. But that is in a fraction to what Tesla buys today. We probably don't even buy 0.25% of what Tesla buys when it comes to batteries today. But we're able to power 500,000 riders on the network. So, the amount of resources it takes helps us with solving that problem of instability in the economy. But, it's just overall, like I was saying, we're just getting started, going into markets like China and Indonesia and India is going to change that, of course, because just the sheer size of it. So Taiwan has sold in the previous couple of years an average of about 700,000 to 800,000 two-wheelers every year. But if you look at the region, just in China and India and Indonesia alone, more than 64 million vehicles sold every year. So that's almost like 100 times, 100x. So it's a happy problem to have, right? By that time, hopefully, we're going to face the music of shortage, right? But in the meantime, I think we're doing good. Of course, I'm not going to say no problem at all. But I think we're able to solve those problems in the foreseeable future.
And speaking of happy problems, one of the things I like to ask guests on the show is for their bold predictions. Anything they see, like say 5 to 10 years out, either about your market and what you're trying to achieve, or just kind of for you, I'll ask you just the broader transportation market, maybe, right? So like, what kind of things do you envision or dream about? Might be commonplace. Like I said, in that time frame, 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's consolidation will happen. Not everybody is going to be, there's not going to be all these brands out there of electric vehicles. And that's one of the things that we've done a good job, I think Gogoro has, in that we approach the problem as a platform. So remember when Android phones first started, there was a Nexus phone, with a funny swivel keyboard, and a number of different kind of keyboard devices. Well, I built a lot of those. Yeah, and I saw a world where let the innovators and let the device maker build their own thing, but at the end of the day, they all come back to one common denominator, which was the operating platform. And so for us, Gogoro is really building the vehicle that is similar to the Nexus phone at the time. So we continue to push boundary and create new vehicles and new style, new design, and new functionality, only to share those functionality with all our vehicle partners. A great example of that is a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago actually, before the rainy season, we launched what we call the rain mode. So we let vehicles, our subscribers, update their vehicle with a rain mode option. So when your phone sees that in where you're parked and where you're standing happens to be raining, It'll say, when you unlock your vehicle, do you want to engage ring mode versus a regular high torque mode? You say ring mode, then it helps your vehicle not skip and not slide in the rain, in the wet ground. And that ability to filter the vehicle is not only through us, but also to the Yamaha vehicle, the Suzuki Taiwan vehicle, and a number of other vehicle makers that now also has that functionality. We built the first set of vehicles, enable 9 other vehicle makers to build their vehicles, and then expand the models. So they now create 47 different models. Two-wheelers, three-wheelers, heavy duty, 4 battery one, 2 battery one, single battery one. So a variety to solve different problems. And I think that consolidation to a platform that builds with efficiency over time is where you're going to see, a lot of us moving toward.
Well, great. I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing where this whole marketplace, takes shape, because I find it, the perfect solution for, like you said, for kind of urban areas, high density areas where, millions and billions of short trips. So
yeah, I think 4-wheelers are great for long haul, but as you think about these urban centers, what I call hyper commute, right? You got to run like 2 miles one direction, not long enough to take a car, not short enough to walk. That's kind of where we live, the sweet spot in which we live. And the fact that two-wheelers are so massively adopted in these densely populated cities is where the opportunity lies. They're not going to get a place to charge. But if you're in the city, Sean, if you're in front of me, right, and you just plugged in and you're taking 20 minutes to charge, I'm standing in 20 minutes plus my 20 minutes. So that's kind of where the sweet spot we live in is the ability to provide for these two-wheelers to quickly swap and get on their way. And that hyper efficiency of that network, and how we are best to calculate when, where, and how much energy are you going to bring back and how much energy you're expecting is where Gogoro lives. We know when if I ask you, which gas station do you go to, if you happen to own a gas car today, which gas station you go to, you probably can name the 3 or 4. And when do you go to that? Probably about the 3 or 4 times that you go every week, right? And so similarly, we kind of use that data to create our mesh, create our intelligence behind the network to do prediction. Who's going to come? When are they going to come? And then not take energy when they don't need energy. The worst thing to do is charge these batteries and let them sit there. So we charge just in time. We distribute the right battery to the right user, right? And we can predict when you're going to come back, and then and condition these batteries during the time in which it is in the rack. And that's kind of where we are. What the consumer sees is a great, shiny, kind of fun two-wheeler. I went to school wanting to be an actuary and in insurance and probability. So that I get to do my dream job, which is really calculating probability of a network and creating the most efficient network there is in electric mobility. And that's kind of where we're living today.
are you able to use some of that data? You're talking about, the riders and their usage of when they charge. Are you able to, is there any vision to kind of use that to incentivize them to charge at a different time, when the network's not so weighted down, there's not so much demand?
Yeah, we have a thing we call green pin. So in our app today, if you open our app, you'll see a whole bunch of dots on the network, and tell you this network that you usually go to is great, but it's a little stressed. But if you're willing to make a right turn, just couple hundred feet that direction, we'll give you a discount. It's all based on supply and demand, right? So, I have stations that are large scale, that has higher efficiency, that offer discount more often. And then I have smaller stations that you have to pay regular price. And so we do incentivize user based on that behavior because we know the prediction of when people are going to come. That's one thing we do. The other thing we also do is, if you give us permission, we will actually help collect some of the data that you use. So for example, do you twist the throttle heavy? Do you squeeze your brakes hard? Do you turn on your blinkers before you make a turn? Those are all data that actually we can collect from your vehicle and then share with your insurance company so you can actually reduce your premium. So we do that also. Today we we take your kilometers that you've written and share with the insurance company, and we're working on taking even more to reduce your premium. So a connected smart system offers more than just kind of clean propulsion. But also at the same time, we're talking about, how do you actually make the user experience of owning an electric vehicle far better than that of gas, right? Not only is it quicker, cleaner, but because it's smarter and more connected, you can actually have more functionalities and more around your living circle. So, other services that we're bringing up with that data could be everything from location-based advertising. If you're willing to go to 7-Eleven to swap a battery, maybe 7-Eleven will pay you something instead of, going to, one that is in an apartment building.
Free Slurpees to grab a battery from 7-Eleven.
Something like that, right? So, the ability for us to use that to incentivize, and for our partners, they love traffic. They love to see that traffic come to their front door, and we can transfer that saving if the consumer allows us to, of course, there's a lot of privacy, a lot of user, acknowledgement and agreement that we need to make sure we cross the T and dot the I's to. But at the same time, the possibility is endless as to what we can do with the system. That it's connected, upgradable. Not only is our station upgradable, so our station goes to filter update or firmware upgrade, just like your smartphone does. Periodically. Our battery also do the same. Think about battery as a smartphone. A lot of us came out of smartphone space. So think about our battery as a smartphone without a screen, but a huge battery behind it. That's kind of how programmable it is. And then vehicles are also programmable and upgradable. So I can actually program the station then program the battery then program the vehicle, and vice versa. I can dispatch patches to the network, as well as I can collect information back up to the network, real time if we wanted to. So it's a very sophisticated system that that we've been able to today been able to kind of develop and made very efficient in Taiwan. And the next step for us is really to take this and cookie cut with our partners into all these other regions that we're talking about.
Yeah, and just one comment on the data going to insurers. I don't know if the evil Knievel drivers out there will like that. They're going to probably not want you to share that with their insurance company.
Yeah, well, and they can opt out. They don't need to, right? Only upon you agreeing to share with the insurance company.
Yeah, I got
insurance you get the data, right? So yeah, the evil Knievels of the world don't want to share that, and that's great. Or they do. I don't know.
Any other topics you want to cover?
One of the most interesting thing, about your channel here and your listener is around sustainability, right? Sustainability is not just in, mobility itself. Our batteries are able to power, all sorts of different things. Think of us as, you have the D-cell battery, right? And then you got the supersized Gogoro batteries. But just really think of us as portable batteries that can power innovation. And can it be used for camping? Maybe one day. Kind of retire them from mobility, and then replenish, it with new batteries onto the network and upgrade the consumer. We can actually take these batteries and reapply them to different things. Sustainability is about not just, electric vehicle is fun, of course, but it's really about how do you actually use these energy system and put it everywhere, and have it easily accessible to the masses. And today we've done that with with transportation. We've done it with infrastructure. We're even powering and backing up 5G deployment in cities where these pico towers actually need power backup because the power might go out. So we're there to really take energy and put that into better use, into portable use, into swappable use. That's how we should really think of us. Mobility is only one sector, but of course, mobility is a gigantic sector that everybody's talking about today. But if you roll forward 20 or 30 years from now, it's really about battery distributed everywhere within the city. And how do you make these batteries more accessible, safer, more connected and upgradable and updatable and accessible? And that's kind of what Gogoro is working on.
Well, it sounds like very exciting times. I got to tell you, I'm fascinated by what Gogoro is doing and what the future looks like for you and the company. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, Horace.
Hey, thank you.
Well, that's our show for today. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And be sure to follow us on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @RenewablesPod. And if you'd like a daily dose of renewable news delivered to your inbox, head to smartbrief.com and sign up for the Renewable Energy Smart Brief. The Renewable Energy Smart Pod is a production of Smart Brief, a future company.